Welcome back to another episode of Rock Boys Football, predicting how this Florida State depth chart shakes out week one of the 2024 season. And this is a very exciting conversation to get into. We've talked about this Florida State roster top to bottom, and the main conversation that keeps coming up is how deep this team is and how many important position battles you're going to see for this Florida State team. Going to give you guys some of my predictions in terms of who wins some of these position battles and who are going to be the guys that are your starters for this Florida State program heading into 2024. Extremely excited to get into this one. Before we do, and as always, just want to say thank you to you guys and a massive shout out to the Florida State fans. It is no secret. I love talking about this program. The amount of support you guys have shown the boys, that truly does mean the world. Cannot thank you guys enough. If y'all do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. And much more importantly, would love to hear from you guys in the comment section in terms of who you have winning some of these position battles that we're going to be talking about. I always learn a ton from you guys, and I love talking ball with you guys in the comment section. So let me know how you guys are feeling about some of these predictions. Without further ado, let's get into this one. And you got to start with giving Mike Norvell so much credit in terms of what he's done with this roster. You talk about Florida State's aspirations and goals and what the standard is in Tallahassee with Mike Norvell. It's ACC championships. It's national championships. And for it to be able to do that, you got to be deep, right? If you're playing 15 games in a season, you got to have the depth to withstand that. And I think this is a team that is arguably deeper than the team that we saw in 2023. Now, getting into what this depth chart looks like at the quarterback spot, it's no secret. You brought DJU in to be the guy heading into 2024. And what I'm most excited about is what does it look like for DJU to potentially take that next step? We all know he is extremely talented. Can Mike Norvell work the magic that he worked with Jordan Travis? And if he does, and DJU kind of fulfills that potential, you're looking at a really special quarterback in that 2024 year. Now, this is where it gets hairy. Going to the running back room, and I know a lot of Florida State fans are extremely high on what Holmes can do in that running back room. He's certainly going to get a lot of burn, but if you're asking me to project two of those running backs that are going to get the most work for Florida State, I'm going Roydell Williams, who, going back and watching some of the things that he did at Alabama, I think that's exactly what Florida State wants from him. A guy that can run between the tackles, has really good feel in terms of working through traffic, a down-by-down guy. I think Roydell Williams is your dude. But I want to shout out Lawrence Tuafili and the Florida State fans who've been rocking with the fellas for the last couple of weeks. I have been banging the table for Lawrence Tuafili, a guy that the only game that he had 10-plus carries went for 118 yards against Louisville in the conference championship game. He's been behind Trey Benson, one of the best running backs that we saw in the country last year. What does it look like for Lawrence to get a little bit more burn and opportunity? That's what excites me the most, and so many things that he can do out of the backfield as well. Trying to replace all the production that Keon Coleman and Johnny Wilson and Jaheim Bell are leaving behind, I think Lawrence's touches go up in 2024, and I think he's a guy that can really make those game-changing plays. Now, to the wide receiver room, I have to pick three, and this one probably was the most difficult one to do, and it's a good problem to have where you're Florida State. You have 7 or 8 guys that have a ton of potential. And I think the question is, all right, which 3 guys really emerge as those Florida State wide receivers? Number one, going with Malik Benson. I think Malik Benson is absolutely dripping with talent. And you go back 12 months ago, Malik Benson kind of took over the Alabama spring camp, a guy that a lot of people were really excited about, didn't quite meet that potential in the 2023 year. At the end of the day, you're talking about a big body that's a smooth mover and is one of the fastest players on the football field, clocked a 10-4 100-meter dash. Malik Benson, I think, is going to be the leading wide receiver for this Florida State team. Next one up, and I went back and forth between Kentron and Hakeem Williams, and they're both going to play a lot, but I'm going to go with the young buck, Hakeem Williams. And we knew Hakeem Williams wouldn't be a year 1 guy, but we kind of knew he'd be a year 2 and a year 3 guy. And from what you're hearing, the progression that he's making, kind of adding some nuance in terms of the route running and how to play that wide receiver at the Power 5 level. He's dripping with talent. I think he's a guy that can work vertically down the field, make some of those contested catches. Again, DJU likes to push the ball down the field. Give me Hakeem Williams to be a starting wide receiver. And the last one I'm going to go to is the slot wide receiver. And I'm going to go Destin Hill. And I know this is a Florida State fan favorite. He's a fan favorite of mine too. And I think Destin Hill emerges as that guy. And you take a look at this Florida State wide receiver room, so many different guys that have so much potential. I'm going to go with the youth in Destin Hill and Hakeem Williams, two guys that I think break out going into year 2 of their college football careers. On the offensive line, this is where I think I'm most excited for Florida State to take that step. If there was one position that I didn't think was national championship caliber, it probably was that offensive line. I think largely because the whole offensive line was hurt. I mean, they were rotating guys in and out. You could tell they were all banged up. Giving you guys my projection to be the 5 starting offensive linemen for Florida State. At left tackle, Darius Washington. He was absolutely nails, and it is massive to get him back at that left tackle spot. Left guard, I'm going to go TJ Ferguson as well. Terrence Ferguson is a guy that has so much upside. Didn't get a ton of chances to play at Alabama early in his career, but I think he comes to Florida State and arguably has one of the higher upsides for this Florida State offensive line at that center spot. Maurice Smith, a guy that played a lot for Florida State. I think he can take some strides. Also a guy that I think was battling through some injuries. At right guard, a lot of people think that Richie Leonard comes in and starts, and I think he certainly can, but I think you're getting a very contested position battle, and I'm going to lean with Keandre Jones, a guy that you take a look at the numbers and go back and watch some of the film, 247 pass pro opportunities, only gave up 4 pressures and 1 sack. He's a guy that I think is kind of hitting his stride at the Power 5 level. And then the right tackle spot, I think you also have a competition, but with Robert Scott Jr. and all the injuries that he's endured, I'm going to go with Jeremiah Byers, who really flashed some good play, but the consistency really was never there. This is a guy that I think going into year 2 at the Power 5 level, coming from UTEP, probably gets a better feel of what it's like to play at that Power 5 level. And I think you might see him take some strides as well. And then at that tight end position, Kyle Morlock, but don't count off freshman Landon Thomas, a guy that certainly can make some noise at that tight end room. Now going over to the defense, and this is where I think it gets really exciting. A lot of different position battles, a lot of versatility for this Florida State team. Now, starting with your edge rushers, and I would like to preface this with, I think you're going to see Florida State rotate all 4 of these guys, but if I had to pick 2 guys that are going to be your starters for Florida State, it's going to be Patrick Payton on one side, a guy that from 32 quarterback hurries in 2023, you have consistently seen him get better and better each single year he's been at Florida State. I think he breaks out in 2024. And then on the other side, I'm going with the Oregon State transfer, Sione Lolea. And I really like how Patrick Payton and Sione balance each other out, right? Patrick Payton is more of that Ferrari with a ton of juice and athleticism off the edge, really going to tackle tackles, or really going to test tackles with his athleticism. And then Sione Lolea, a hammer in the run game, has those strong hands like Jared Verse, more of a Mack truck as a pass rusher, right? Not as bursty and bendy as a guy like Patrick Payton. He's going to go speed the power and go right through tackles. And obviously Tamiwa, Marvin Jones Jr. certainly going to play plenty. Kicking on the inside, I think you got Joshua Farmer, Darrell Jackson Jr. I wouldn't be surprised if you see Florida State maybe add one more body on the inside of that defensive line in the portal. But you got 2 really good starters with Joshua Farmer and Darrell Jackson Jr. Going to the linebacker room, which is, in my mind, by far the biggest question mark for Florida State, not only from a starter standpoint, but from a depth standpoint as well. Getting DJ Lundy back was absolutely massive. This was a guy that led Florida State in run stops last year with 24 of them. And then on the other linebacker spot, I'm going to lean Sean Murphy right now, but Sean Murphy, Blake Nicholson, 2 guys that you don't have a ton of data on, right? They haven't played a ton during their college football career. Sean Murphy transferring from Alabama, Blake Nicholson going into year 2. I think those guys probably compete for a starting spot, but that's a position that wouldn't be surprised if Mike Norvell is evaluating and probably adds a veteran linebacker, but more specifically a linebacker that's played a lot of football at the Power 5 level after spring ball, if maybe you still have some question marks at that linebacker spot. But right now, DJ Lundy, Sean Murphy, my starters at the linebacker spot. Going to the back end, and I think you talk about the boundary cornerbacks, that's a lock, right? Fentrell Cypress and Thomas, two guys that made up one of the better secondaries that you saw in the country last year. I think you're looking at two guys that have not only all conference potential, but really have already reached that potential, been all conference players in 2023. At the safety spot, this is where I think it gets really interesting. I think Shaheem Brown is probably a lock. Now, I have Conrad Hussey starting at the other safety spot. Many of you guys know I'm a massive fan of what Conrad Hussey can do. You saw the growing pains as a true freshman, but you also saw Mike Norvell try to get him on the field as much as possible. And what does that tell you? That Mike Norvell has seen it in practice and he wants to see it in the game. I don't know if we fully saw it during his first year at Florida State, but going into year two, I mean, sign me up for Conrad Hussey coming in and being a very good safety, year two of his college career. And then the last conversation we have to have, and again, a really intriguing position battle between Greedy Vance Jr., who is experienced. I thought he played very well for Florida State at times in 2023. And then you have Earl Little Jr., who, again, probably has the higher upside. And that's really exactly how you want these position battles going down, right? You have a veteran that you know gives you a high floor, and then you got a young buck in Earl Little Jr. who's going to be competing for those reps at that nickel spot. Really exciting, a ton of position battles that are going to play out. I'm going with Earl Little Jr. as my starting nickel. That'll do it. That's my prediction in terms of what this Florida State depth chart looks like heading into 2024 week one. Again, a lot of different ways that you could put this puzzle piece together. Would love to hear from you guys in the comment section. And if you guys do enjoy the content, consider subscribing to the channel. Appreciate you guys, and we'll talk to y'all later.